Welcome to VSOW. We are opening the vault today for a really rigorous deep dive into a show that, well, for a lot of years, it kind of defined network television tension. We're talking about the intricate, sometimes chaotic, and often pretty dark world of Prison Break.
Yeah, and for those tuning in, just a quick refresher. This is the series all about the impossible, really. You've got this genius structural engineer, Michael Scofield,
Yeah.
who deliberately gets himself locked up. Why? To execute this incredibly detailed plan to free his brother, Lincoln Burrows, who he believes is wrongfully convicted. The tension was just relentless, wasn't it? The stakes felt sky high. And let's be honest, the plot got incredibly complex, maybe even a little confusing by the end.
Oh, absolutely. And when you actually dig into the source material we've gathered, I mean, the internal studio chaos, the frantic, almost disastrous casting process,
Yeah.
and the frankly unsettling history of the real prison they used, it becomes clear the drama behind the scenes was often just as intense as what we saw on screen.
Right. So our mission today really is to synthesize all of that. We want to look at the show's origins, its crucial connection to, you know, real-world prison history, and importantly, how the storyline evolved. It got so complicated, they basically had to give the audience, what, 3 different endings? We really want to give you, the listener, a granular, fact-based look at the show's legacy and, yeah, the controversies it stirred up, sometimes accidentally, sometimes maybe not.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Because that core concept, the guy tattooing a prison blueprint all over his body,
Yeah.
that whole idea nearly died before it even started. This project basically had a commercial near-death experience.
It really did. It's kind of a classic Hollywood story, actually, more about timing than quality, perhaps. See, when the creator, Paul Schering, first pitched Prison Break to FOX, this is back in 2003, they flat out rejected it, just said no.
And the main reason was they just couldn't see it working long-term, right? The viability of the story.
Exactly. They just didn't believe the premise, one big escape plan, could sustain a whole series or multiple series. Thought, okay, once the brothers are out, then what? The story's over. But what's crucial is the context. This was before shows like Lost and 24 really took off. It was only after those shows proved audiences were hungry for that kind of serialized, high-tension drama that FOX changed their minds. So in 2004, they finally greenlit it, but only because those other shows paved the way.
Right, so the door finally creaks open for production, and immediately there's this new panic setting in. Casting, finding the right guys for Michael and Lincoln. Our sources paint this picture of just an incredibly stressful, down-to-the-wire scramble.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for Michael Scofield. That role needed something really specific. Schering himself called the search harrowing weeks. They needed this unique mix, like genius, but also vulnerability, control, but also this deep mystery.
That's a tough needle to thread, isn't it? Too sinister, you lose the audience. Too soft, the whole mastermind thing falls apart.
Precisely. And apparently a lot of the actors who came in just didn't get it. The sources say the auditions were often cheesy and false. They just couldn't nail that calculating, magnetic quality. Production was genuinely stuck. It was looking pretty bad.
And then enter Wentworth Miller. Literally saving the day with, what, only a week left before filming?
Yeah, just 1 week. It was incredibly last minute. Apparently, when Miller walked in, the team just knew. Someone said he was Scofield times 10. He just had that intensity, that calm presence they've been desperately looking for. Imagine the relief in that room.
Okay, but the chaos didn't stop there. Miller's cast a week out, but Lincoln Burrows, the whole reason Michael's even doing this. He was cast even later.
Unbelievably, yes. Dominic Purcell was the absolute last piece of the puzzle. He signed on just 3 days before production started. And apparently, the creator initially wasn't even sure he was right for Lincoln. He had doubts. So think about that. Casting your 2 leads less than a week before cameras roll, no time for proper screen tests, chemistry reads. It's kind of a miracle it worked. But the sources say their chemistry was immediate, believable. That connection was just there, despite the insane timing. One of the show's great lucky breaks, really.
So they scramble, they get their leads, and then they head straight into filming the most important character of season 1, arguably, the prison itself. Fox River Penitentiary. It felt so real, so old, so intimidating. And that's because, well, most of it was real.
Yeah, that authenticity is absolutely key to the show's whole vibe. They filmed heavily inside the Joliet Correctional Center in Illinois.
And this wasn't some Hollywood set dressed up to look old. This place had a serious, often pretty grim history. It operated from 1858 right up until 2002. So it had only been closed for, what, 2 years when they started filming.
Exactly. So the interior shots, the yard, the cell blocks, even the infirmary scenes, that was all shot inside the actual decommissioned prison. That immediately gave the show this incredible visual weight, this gravity. The cast and crew were literally walking through history, a century and a half.
Yeah, when you actually look into the real Juliet's past, wow, the limestone walls held some dark stuff. Opened in 1858, built using convict labor. They literally quarried the stone on site.
Yeah, and by the 1870s, it was already overcrowded, housing over 1,200 inmates. And it's important to remember it wasn't always just men. There was a female cell house there from 1859 until 1933. Then the women were transferred out, and that section was just absorbed into the main prison for the growing male population, overcrowding and repurposing. Right. That was sort of the story of Joliet.
And as you move into the 20th century, Joliet starts intersecting with some really infamous American crime stories.
It really does. In 1924, Joliet housed Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, the crime of the century killers, wealthy young men, huge trial, Clarence Darrow defense. They avoided the death penalty.
Right, and the fascinating thing is they didn't just, rot in their cells. They actually did something constructive.
It's a really complex footnote in the prison's history.
Mm-hmm.
The sources say Leopold and Loeb used their education and, frankly, their privilege to significantly improve the prison's educational program. They got better books, better materials. Mm-hmm. It's this weird contradiction, right? Two notorious murderers using their intellect for something positive within the prison walls.
Mm-hmm. A strange glimmer of reform there, but it seems like that was pretty overshadowed by some much darker stuff later on, particularly involving medical practices.
Oh, absolutely. This is where Joliet's history gets really disturbing. In the late 1960s, the prison became a site for some highly controversial medical experiments.
Yeah.
This was after similar hepatitis experiments on, developmentally disabled kids had been stopped due to ethical outrage.
So the researchers needed new subjects, and they turned to the prison system.
Exactly. The U.S. Army was looking for volunteers to continue research into hepatitis A, which is a big problem in military camps. And they found these volunteers at Joliet. Often, these were conscientious objectors to the Vietnam War, maybe looking for a way to get better treatment or navigate their sentence.
And what did these experiments actually involve? The sources must detail this.
It sounds horrific, frankly. Subjects were deliberately infected with the virus. Some sources mention them having to drink contaminated milkshakes containing feces, exposed to infected waste. The goal was mass production and isolation of the Hep B virus for the Army's needs. It's a really chilling example of how incarcerated, marginalized people were sometimes used for risky medical research.
Yeah.
Puts the fictional dangers of Fox River into a much scarier real-world context.
That real-life horror definitely adds another layer to watching those early seasons. And there was also a major violent incident there before it closed, right, in the 70s.
Yeah, the prison was apparently a real powder keg then. In 1975, there was a big hostage situation, a murder. And it was directly tied to tensions from transferring gang members between different Illinois prisons. Just shows the kind of internal chaos and systemic breakdown happening there long before the show arrived.
Okay, bringing it back to the actual filming, the detail about Dominic Purcell's cell, that's the one that really gives me the creeps.
It is genuinely chilling. Dominic Purcell, playing Lincoln, filmed some scenes in the actual cell once occupied by John Wayne Gacy.
Gacy, one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. And the sources say the crew found it disturbing.
Yeah, reportedly the specific location was just too creepy for some crew members. They didn't want to go in there.
Yeah.
You can only imagine the vibe on set, recreating intense prison drama in the literal space where such real darkness occurred. It must have seeped into the atmosphere, maybe even the performances. And speaking of performance and reality, Stacy Keach, who played Warden Pope, he wasn't just acting.
Right, he'd actually served time himself, hadn't he, in the UK?
That's right. Back in 1984, Keach was arrested at London Airport for cocaine possession and use. He ended up serving, I think it was 9 months, in Reading Prison, and instead of hiding that, he used it. He specifically based Warden Pope on the actual warden he knew at Reading.
How did that translate into the character, do you think?
Well, it gave Pope this layer of maybe authenticity. He wasn't just a standard cartoonishly evil prison warden, which you see a lot. Keach portrayed him as more complex, sometimes genuinely trying to do the right thing even within a flawed system. That nuance likely came from Keach drawing on a real person, a real experience, not just a stereotype. Okay, so the whole show hangs on Michael Scofield's plan, his dedication. And the most visual symbol of that is the tattoo, right? The full-body blueprint.
Yeah, the ultimate commitment. But let's talk logistics. In the show, he gets it done relatively quickly. What about the reality, the time, the cost?
Well, the reality is pretty staggering when you compare it. Our sources estimate that creating a tattoo that extensive, that detailed, it would take something like 4 years of regular sessions.
4 years. Wow. Constant pain, constant work.
Exactly. And the cost, likely upwards of $20,000 in today's money. So when you think about Michael, this successful engineer, supposedly using his savings, enduring years of physical work just to create the map, it really elevates the sacrifice, makes it almost mythical, even though the show obviously had to speed things up.
And the irony is, the genius of that plan, the very thing that made the show a hit, it actually caused real-world problems for prisons.
Yeah, it led to this weird controversy based on, like, fear of inspiration.
Prison Break ended up being banned from broadcast in 13 different prisons across the U.S.
13 separate facilities censoring the show.
Mm.
But why? Even the officials admitted Michael's plans were, fantasy. Exaggerated. It wasn't about practicality, really. It was more about psychology. The officials were worried the show would give inmates ideas of escape. Not necessarily the how, but the idea itself.
Mm-hmm.
Watching this brilliant guy successfully beat the system, they felt that narrative was just too potent, too potentially disruptive to show to the prison population. It kind of speaks to how compelling the show was that actual prison authorities saw it as a potential security risk.
Okay, shifting from institutional risk to personal risk. We absolutely have to talk about Dominic Purcell's injury during the season 5 filming. That was serious.
It was incredibly serious, almost fatal by all accounts. They were filming on location in Casablanca, Morocco, and during one scene, a heavy iron bar just fell directly onto his head. Massive trauma.
He had to be airlifted out, right?
Immediately. Airlifted to a hospital. The injuries were severe. 150 stitches for the head wound, a badly broken nose.
I remember reading his quotes about it. He genuinely thought he was going to die.
Yeah, he described looking at his stunt guy, realizing how bad it was, seeing his own skull, his nose completely smashed over. He said flat out, "I thought I was going to die."
And that real-life trauma, that visible injury, it had to be written into the show, didn't it? They couldn't just hide it.
No, they had to incorporate it.
Yep.
So Lincoln Burrows' character arc in season 5 includes those physical injuries. It's a stark reminder of just how dangerous filming these big action sequences can be, especially, in remote, challenging locations. Integrating real injuries like that so seamlessly, it's pretty rare. And says a lot about the production and Purcell himself.
Did that huge incident change how they approached safety afterwards, according to the sources?
Well, the general feeling seemed to be it definitely heightened everyone's awareness, made them double-check protocols. But, they were filming in inherently risky places, old prisons, deserts. The network wanted that gritty aesthetic, and that comes with risks. They seemed committed to it despite the close call.
Okay, so the network worried about the show inspiring inmates. But then you have these instances where real life seemed to imitate the show's drama, sometimes in really tragic ways. Like the lawsuit, FOX actually got sued over the core premise, right? The whole two brothers, one breaking the other out.
Yeah, that was the Brotherhood lawsuit back in 2006. These two real brothers claimed the show was basically their life story, just slightly changed, and used without permission. Their story went all the way back to 1964.
What actually happened with them? What was their ordeal?
Well, the older brother, Donald Hughes, broke his 16-year-old brother, Robert, out of a juvenile detention center. Robert had apparently been wrongfully convicted of a felony.
And they managed to stay free for a while.
Yeah, for 4 years they lived as fugitives, kept underground until Robert was eventually exonerated. Their claim was that they'd actually sent a manuscript detailing all this, the wrongful conviction, the escape plan, the brotherhood aspect, to FOX before the show aired. FOX rejected it, and then Prison Break came out. The similarities were enough for them to sue. It really highlights how the show tapped into these resonant, real-life themes of justice, injustice, and escape.
Wow. Okay, so that's an external legal battle. But then you have the internal cast issues.
Yeah.
The real-life legal troubles some actors faced. It's kind of jarring.
It's definitely disturbing, especially with Lane Garrison, the actor who played Tweener. His character, Tweener, gets killed off in season 2. And then, very shortly after that, in 2007, Garrison himself faced really serious legal trouble in real life.
What were the details there?
He was driving under the influence of alcohol, got into a car crash, and tragically, a 17-year-old passenger in his car was killed. He was convicted of vehicular manslaughter and sentenced to 40 months in prison. He served his time, got out in 2009. But that symmetry, his character dies on the show, and then he ends up incarcerated because of this terrible criminal act. It's a really dark, unsettling echo of the show's themes.
Yeah, it's such a stark contrast to Stacy Keach, Warden Pope, using his past incarceration constructively for the role.
Exactly. Keach's past added depth, whereas Garrison's situation became this tragic reflection of the consequences the show itself explored.
Okay, now we really need to dig into season 5, the revival, because Taking the show to the Middle East, that was a huge shift and a really politically charged one.
Absolutely. Season 5 moves the whole story to Yemen. Michael's supposedly imprisoned as a terrorist suspect in ISIS-controlled territory.
Yeah.
Now, the creator, Paul Schering, he was very clear. He said he had no interest in political commentary. He just wanted a new, dangerous prison setting.
Yeah.
But the show premiered right in the middle of a really intense period in the U.S. Lots of debate and tension around Islamophobia.
So intention aside, the setting itself was bound to cause controversy, right?
Unavoidably. And the critical reaction was really split. You had some critics who actually praised parts of it, saying, they included some nuanced characters, tried to show some positive portrayals, avoid total stereotypes.
Okay, so some saw nuance. What was the other side?
The much more common criticism was that, well, by setting it in ISIS territory, framing the whole region as this backdrop for extreme danger, the show basically ended up playing into existing stereotypes, using the Middle East as this sort of exotic, dangerous playground for the main characters. Critics argued it furthered problematic tropes, regardless of intent. It seems like it was a really difficult tightrope to walk, politically and culturally, and many felt the show didn't quite manage it.
Right. And finally, in this section, we have to touch on the situation with Robert Knepper, who played T-Bag, such an iconic, complex villain.
Yeah, T-Bag is unforgettable. But in 2017, after the Harvey Weinstein allegations really opened the floodgates in Hollywood, allegations surfaced against Robert Knepper too. A costume designer accused him of assault from years prior. Then I think 4 other women came forward with separate allegations. Knepper strongly denied everything, said the claims were false.
Was there any kind of official investigation by the studios?
Well, at the time, Knepper was on another show, iZombie, Warner Bros. TV did investigate his conduct specifically on that set, and they announced they found no evidence of wrongdoing there.
Okay.
But given the number and seriousness of the historical allegations, even though denied, the sources we looked at basically conclude the same thing. It's highly unlikely we'll see T-Bag, despite being a fan favorite, in any future Prison Break projects because of the shadow the unresolved claims cast. Okay, before we dive into the 3, count them, 3 different endings, we have to talk about Sarah Tancredi.
Yeah.
Dr. Sarah. She probably cheated death more times than Michael himself. Her whole storyline is like a master class in the show, battling between plot needs and fan pressure.
Yeah, she survived being killed off by the writers themselves initially.
Exactly. The original plan for the end of season 1, Sarah dies of a drug overdose. That was it. But she became super popular with fans. The chemistry with Michael was undeniable. So the writers did a U-turn mid-season, saved her, made her crucial to the escape.
But then she did die. Season 3, the head in the box, that was shocking.
Brutal. And that death was purely down to real-world stuff. Actress Sarah Wayne Callies was pregnant. There were contract issues. She didn't sign on for season 3. So the writers, needing drama and knowing she wasn't coming back, gave Michael this horrific motivation by killing her off screen.
Only. That didn't last either. She was back for season 4.
Yep. Contract issues got sorted out, and suddenly Sarah wasn't dead after all. They had to do a full retcon. Basically say, oh, that head in the box wasn't Sarah's. They just rewrote history. This whole cycle, killing characters, bringing them back because of fan love or contract stuff, it really defined the show's sometimes messy narrative arc.
Okay, so now let's untangle the ending saga. 3 distinct conclusions offered over the years. It's a bit of a maze.
Let's start with ending 1, the original season 4 finale. This was presented as the end, the final word.
And it gave everyone closure, mostly. Big exoneration scene, Kellerman comes back as a good guy, helps clear their names, and then that time jump, right? 4 years later, showing everyone living relatively normal, free lives.
Right, but with a huge asterisk. That final scene, Lincoln, Sarah, their kid, visiting Michael's grave. The implication was clear. His brain tumor came back, the nosebleed was the sign, and he died sometime during those 4 years, off screen. A lot of people felt this was the best ending. Bittersweet, sure, but gave most characters peace while keeping the stakes high. The hero paid the ultimate price for it all. It felt earned somehow.
Okay, that was the official end for a while.
Yeah.
Then came ending 2, the final break.
Yeah, this was a 2-part TV movie special thing, released later. Its whole purpose was to fill in the gap. To show how Michael died, not just imply it happens off-screen due to illness.
And this time, his death wasn't medical, it was a sacrifice.
Right, yeah.
An act of choice.
Exactly. The setup is Sarah gets arrested for killing Michael's mother, Christina Schofield, who was the big villain. Michael and Lincoln have to break her out of a women's prison this time. And in the end, Michael sacrifices himself. He basically uses his body to short-circuit an electronic door, electrocuting himself, but letting Sarah escape. This version was actually pretty popular with audiences, got good ratings. It brought back the core break element, which people loved.
Right. And then years go by.
Mm.
Then we get Ending 3, the Season 5 retcon, the revival.
Yep. Season 5 just throws both previous endings out the window. Starts with the reveal, Michael faked his death. Again. And now he's stuck in that prison Ojibwa in Yemen, and the brothers have to team up one more time.
But this season wasn't as well received critically, was it?
No, it got pretty mixed reviews. Critics pointed to stuff like Sarah having remarried, only for Michael to pop back up. Felt a bit cheap, maybe. And fan favorites like Mahone were just completely missing, which felt odd given the situation. But it did one thing the others didn't. It gave Michael a completely, unambiguously happy ending. Finally exonerated, free, with Sarah and his son, no strings attached.
Okay, so 3 endings. Tragic fate, noble sacrifice, or ultimate happy ever after. Based on the sources, the critical analysis, the fan reaction over time, which one really landed best for the show's overall story and themes?
The consensus really leans towards the original Season 4 ending, the bittersweet one. It seemed to strike the best balance. It gave closure to the ensemble, let them find peace. But it kept the core idea intact. Michael's journey, his sacrifice, was so immense it had to have a lasting, profound cost, even for him. The later happy endings, while maybe satisfying in the moment, arguably kind of diluted the weight of everything that came before.
And that raises a big question for this upcoming reboot they're talking about. Same universe, supposedly, but no Michael or Lincoln. If they're going for a new tone, they have to decide which ending they're building from, right? Or which one they ignore.
That's the big continuity puzzle for them. If they want a gritty new story, maybe they subtly lean back towards that original ending. Maybe Michael is this legend, presumed dead, whose genius and the price he paid kind of hangs over these new characters in their own desperate situation. It preserves his legacy without needing the full happy ending.
So what you're suggesting is that Michael's character was almost defined by the cost of his actions, and maybe the writers understood that best the first time around, with that tragic ending.
I think that's a fair reading, yeah. The ultimate tension wasn't just breaking out of prison walls. It was escaping the consequences. And maybe the writers struggled with letting go of that consequence so much that they kept trying to rewrite it, needing 3 attempts to find an ending they, or the network, could live with.
Think about that final provocative thought. When your hero's entire identity is built on self-sacrifice for others, how do you give him a perfect happy ending without sort of undercutting the very thing that made him compelling? The show kept killing him off, metaphorically or literally, then resurrecting him. It suggests they could never fully commit to the tragic beauty of what his freedom truly cost.
We definitely invite you to subscribe, like, and comment on VSOW wherever you find your deep dives. Let us know which Prison Break ending you felt was the right one. Was the bittersweet original, the sacrifice, or the final happy reunion?
Thank you for listening to VSOW.